The race is on.
Well, good day, everyone. Good day, everyone. This is Pastor Bruce Carroll, National Field Director for Green the Church, and we're here to share with you the race is on. RACE stands for resilient, aboriginal, courageous, and empowered. Resilient meaning emphasizing the strength and adaptability of Black communities in confronting environmental and social challenges. Aboriginal, recognizing and honoring the deep-rooted connection of Black communities to the land. Courageous, encouraging bold action and transparent dialogue with the hope of addressing environmental injustices and advocate for meaningful change. And then empowered, fostering a sense of agency within individuals and congregations to take responsibility for environmental stewardship and community resilience. We have these podcasts every other Thursday, and we're welcome and glad to be here today on this episode. This episode, we're going to look at spending with intention, financial wellness as self-care. Actually, how we spend is how we care. How we spend is how we care. This week, we're talking about greening the church and community. Financially, spiritually, and sustainably. Whether you're a faith leader or just trying to line your wallet with your values, this is for you. Our Green the Church operates three foundational pillars that guide its mission to integrate environmental consciousness with Black church communities. Amplifying green theology, where we emphasize that Christians have a duty to protect God's creation. Green the Church collaborates with church leaders to develop and share resources for theological environmental teachings. Promoting sustainability, where we assist church leadership in making their buildings and operation more sustainable. This includes initiatives like energy audits, healthy food programs, aiming to green the church from the ground up. These measures benefit the environment, the church's finances, and the health and well-being of its members. Then lastly, building power for political change. Recognize that community health and prosperity are influenced by policy decisions. Green the Church supports member churches in leveraging their collective political and social influence. But on today, this podcast is really centered around in promoting sustainable practices, practice. And today we are excited to have two friends, two community leaders who will help us focus on financial wellness and self-care. These three pillars collectively aim to empower Black churches to lead in environmental justice and sustainability. Listen, I'm going to introduce Brother Lynn and Sister Terry, who are here on today. Let me share something about them real quickly. Terry Pugh is the owner of Mind, Body, and Soul Salon, founder, Setting the Standard Barbering and Natural Hair Academy, chief life coach, On Purpose Life Coaching Services. She is a dynamic entrepreneur, educator, and life coach dedicated to empowering individuals and enriching her community. She, native of California, relocated to Louisiana in the early 1990 with a vision to owning a full-service beauty salon. In 2009, she expanded her influence in the beauty industry by founding the Setting the Standard Barbering Natural Hair Academy. She's also the chief life coach at On Purpose Life Coaching, where she empowers individuals to discover their purpose, achieve excellence, and live with intentionality. And also, we have Brother Lynn that's here today. Brother Lynn Cawthorn, also he's a native of Shreveport, a businessman, entrepreneur, community leader. He has a managing partner of Cawthorn Financial Group. He's the author of Let My People Go, Making Capitalism Work in Urban America. He served as the adjunct professor at Dillard University. He's a community leader, nonprofit Mordecai Inc. Also is the chairman of State of Black Shreveport Symposium and Economic Summit. He promotes Black-owned businesses, and also he is a life member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, member of the Galilee Baptist Church here in Louisiana. And we're glad and happy to have them on today and to be a part of this powerful piece as we continue to green our churches, and we continue to focus on sustainability. And we're going to ask them first to say hello to everyone on today. We'll go with Miss Terry.
Yeah. Hey, how you guys doing? I'm so grateful to be here with you all. Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to this dynamic discussion and how we're going to share with our people to help empower our people. I'm just excited. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, Brother Lynn. He said he can't hear. Okay, pull him out. So we're going to start with Miss Terry Pugh on today as we began. Lynn will be back. We'll get him back on in a few minutes. But we want to start this idea when we talk about our churches, when we talk about greening our churches, when we talk about the stewardship of resources, our planet, and also where I believe most when we talk about financial wellness or spiritual wellness or financial wellness rooted in spiritual values.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to ask this question is what role should churches and communities play in helping members achieve financial well-being?
Wow, I think that in churches have a lot of resources. We have people in our communities that attend our churches that do work in the finance industry, in banks, and service organizations. I think a lot of times we don't take advantage of the resources that are readily accessible to us because sometimes we're so really familiar. So I think being able to get the resources that we have that are in our community to help empower our people and have symposiums and classes inside the churches and have days, just like we have Bible study, have days that we have financial literacy classes and to teach them how to budget and teach them how to save, to teach maybe start cooperations, co-ops, to where we can put our finances together. And we may not be a grocery store, but we can buy from a grocery store distributor because we'll be able to buy groceries for our families in bulk. Just having that type of mindset and putting those type of organizations together in the community would be very valuable in an arena that the church can operate in.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you're suggesting that
because God says that I want you to be He came for us abundant.
All right, gotcha.
Okay, there we go.
All right, thank you for sharing. So one of the
I can hear you.
One of the points that you mentioned, you talked about.
I can hear you.
You talked about churches being able to have these conversations within their. I guess in substitution for Bible study, for Sunday school, or to collaborate along with that. Or you suggesting that we do that instead of Bible study, or do that in collaboration with our Bible study, our Sunday school, or some of the traditional piece that we have within our churches?
Well, I think that every shepherd understands the nature of their congregation. And just like any great teacher, sometimes you can incorporate it in Bible study and to show how you can use it in practical daily living, or you can have it outside of and saying we're going to utilize the biblical teachings to go with practical living in a different capacity. So whether you're, if your church audience wants the spiritual to stay spiritual and the natural, the carnal, or whatever they say to stay natural, then you can do it that way. So I think you have to gauge it in the context of the type of congregation you have.
Gotcha. Wow, thank you for sharing it. Listen, here's something else I want want to throw it. How do we move from survival to sustainability in not only our personal lives, but our church finances as well? And you may want to hone in, but how do we move ourselves from just surviving? You know, we are people, I guess there's a word I hear, we say we fake it until we make it, you know, but how do we move from just surviving to a point where we begin to thrive? But how'd you characterize that?
So faking it till you make it is a really interesting concept because it's not necessarily a negative connotation, because it's like operating and walking in faith. God says, see things as they, you know, that are not as though they are, right? So sometimes we have to walk in a certain type of energetic presence and have a different type of mindset so we can get out of the survival mode into thriving. So I think first it does change with the mind and understanding that hard time, that our life does not have to be a certain way, even though we've been conditioned and living in certain circumstances. Understanding and accepting that God said he wants us to have an abundant life, and it does not have to look like anybody else's abundant life, but we have to understand and define what success and abundance is to us. And once we start going through those things, and a lot of times we may need counseling, we do, you know, to address the lack mindset. Mental health is very important. That is part of self-care. And when we start addressing the things that have us focusing on lack, which is not what God wants us to experience, you know, in a long-term period, you know, because there are sometimes that God puts us in a season of drought or without, so we can self-discover, discover the things about ourselves that makes us have repetitive cycles. And we're in a situation where we can recognize why I keep going in the same circle and being honest and realizing sometimes it's not that I don't have the work ethic, I don't have the desire, my mindset is not right, or I don't have the right type of mentorship. I don't have, you know, the environment is toxic. And sometimes, like Lot, we have, you know, you have to move yourself out. Abraham had to move, you know, people, we have to move around, you know, understand those things.
Right. So you said something earlier when we talk about mental well-being or mental health. And one term that I learned during the pandemic, or it became popular, trigger. So when we talk about mental health, when we talk about, I mentioned a statement earlier, make it, fake it until you can make it, right? And when the pandemic happened, in the pandemic, we learned there were so many triggers. That word became real popular across this country, in a sense. We began to talk about mental health and when people are, what was having us to act a certain way, when this stuff had already existed. It already existed. We probably didn't characterize it in a frame, because maybe we were running and going, and during the pandemic, a lot of people were able to, you know, people had to kind of stay at home, confine themselves, so they got a chance to think about really what was going on with their own bodies. So as a people, when we talk about mental health, it's not something that we really talk about. Mental health or mental well-being within our families, within our cultures. Can you expound on that a little bit, maybe, for us?
I think now we're in a climate where acknowledging mental health is no longer taboo. You know, that it is now an open conversation in our community, which I'm grateful for, because for a long time, we as a people wasn't able to experience the three emotions. It's either you was mad, you were sad, or you were happy. You know, we couldn't identify frustration. We couldn't identify disappointment. And we all know that angry is a secondary emotion. But when we don't know why we're angry, that I'm angry because I'm disappointed. I'm angry because I feel abandoned. I'm angry because when we are put in a position to be where we're educated about the different type of emotions and are allowed to freely express those different types of emotion, it brings on a different type of autonomy to be able to move around in the world. So because of these things, because this conversation is now open, because now people, when we're isolated, you're able to see. That's why isolation is not a bad thing when we're going through a healing process or a reset. You're able to see the things environmentally, whether it's spiritually, whether it's emotionally, the different types of oppression, the different types of suppression that we have been conditioned to deem as a normal way of living. And we're like, that really doesn't work for me. And acknowledging that doesn't work for me. What we didn't have was, what do I do next? So now I know that this doesn't work for me, but I'm still not sure what does work for me. And is it okay for me to explore those things? And that's what we have to understand, is that once we understand what does not work for us, that we have to be open to exploration, and be willing to go into the unknown. That's what faith is doing things. Sometimes you have an end goal, and it's like an algebra equation. You know that X and Y plus 4 is going to be 36, but you don't know what that X and that Y is. And you have to explore and be able to go through the equation to solve, to get to your answer. So, but I'm great. Just to wrap it up, to say that I'm grateful that we're in a climate that allows us to acknowledge that just because you're having a mental ache doesn't mean that you're sick. Doesn't mean. And sometimes we'll go down a rabbit hole. Oh, I got ADD, and you may just be gifted. So not to say that we want to self-diagnose, but also understand what mental health is like, what mental wellness is like, cleaning out your closet. If your finances are bad, it's going to have you mentally disturbed. You're going to feel oppressed and depressed and sad and different type of helpless and frustrated. So when it comes to our finances and how it affects our mental health and the solutions to it, I think the church can, besides talking about tithing, we can do an extra part inside the church to help them and help people, help our flock get better situated financially so they can sustain themselves and their families.
Wow. Thank you for sharing it. Listen, we're gonna move on. But even in this idea of mental health, mental wellness, mental stability, or having sense of thing, we don't, once again, within our context, yes, the pandemic did allow us to open up a little bit more, but even to understand that I've been triggered, I might have ADHD, but then also getting the help that you need, you need in terms of how do you, saying to your congregation, well, I'm gonna come talk to the pastor. I might be jumping out of it, but the pastor may not have that answer, and then referring them to somebody that would have kind of help them walk through that. So I think a lot of this is that because of the unknown, because of the era which we're in, people don't want to seek out and go sit down and talk to an individual about their needs, and then let people know that that's what we do, from a church perspective, because we're taught to say, hey, trust God, read your Bible. I'm going to put it out there, y'all. Study, ask the Spirit to you. But we want to add a little bit more flavor to it by saying, hey, let's put you with somebody that you can talk to on a weekly, monthly, a bi-weekly or a monthly basis to help you get to your next steps, to help you get to that code in place where you are. But I wanted to, Brother Lynn is back.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was reminded that Jesus is on the main line, and so I had to switch to the right line so I could communicate with y'all.
Hey,
man. Hey, good. We were touching on, had a couple of questions, and I know we're moving fast, but we were talking about the mental well-being and connecting those dots with the church. We talked about faking it till you can make it, and we learned today that that's not a bad thing. That could be a good thing. Making transitions, sitting down and being still. Being quiet. The pandemic taught some of us just to be still. Had us in place and shelter in place. For some people that worked, for some it didn't. You want to add to what your thoughts are in that area?
I definitely will agree with you as it relates to the stillness. Growing up as a young kid, and older people talk about listening to Jesus, praying to Jesus, and I never really understood where I could pray to him. I never heard back from him. And when I learned that prayer is a two-way street, meaning that you petition, and then once you petition, you've got to step back and quiet your mind so that you can hear the response of God. And so I think a lot of people did get in that space during COVID. I think we need to be in that space right about now. I also think that as an individual and in your everyday walk, you need to carve out some time when you can do just that quietness. When you get up, what I do when I get up in the morning, drink a glass of water, first thing I do that stillness, and then what's before me for the day, I can sometimes see it kind of clearly. Some days, maybe not so much, but most days, yes.
Gotcha. Thank y'all both for sharing. Listen, we're going to press this, move this pendulum forward on this call on the day. I want to look at when we talk about churches and communities, when we talk about aligning spending with justice from the pulpit to the people. I want to talk about that for a moment, and I want to raise the issue about communities and churches being able to green their budgets, energy, food, vending programs. How can churches do that? How can churches? And I want to say, when I say churches, you all, I'm talking about community. I want you to know we're talking about community, and so how can communities begin to green their budgets? Families. We live in a world now where our president and the president is tariffs and prices are going to be going up. Our food shortage is going to get worse. People not going to be able to get free food lunch or free food lunches or just access to food. They're doing some cutbacks even with the food banks now. But how can we begin to have these conversations about greening our budgets, energy, food, vendors, programs? Anyone can share.
Lynn, I'll let you go first.
Okay. All right. So that's an excellent question. And the key word that you mentioned was communities. And so I find that in the 21st century, the place and space we find ourselves, that the church is not, quote unquote, the central theme of the community anymore. Take our city for an example, city of Shreveport. There are a lot of churches, but the people that attend the church don't necessarily live in the community. And so it becomes incumbent upon the individual church, in my estimations, that individuals or those individuals that once lived in the community adjacent to the church, is that the local church has to assess where its membership is now, and that community is not necessarily next door down the street, but it's citywide. And they need to invite the community, whether they're a member of the church or they're not a member of the church, to come join in the things that they want to see done. And so to answer your question, the blueprint has already been laid out from a historical perspective. So churches have always had benevolent funds. And so that means saving the money in your budget on an annual basis for people who may have a need. We've had benevolent organizations over the years. That's an outstanding, maybe the Masons and the Eastern Star. Some of those are directly associated with the church. Maybe we need to recreate that. We need to recreate feeding people in the community. There are agencies doing it now. The church, the one did it at once. We need to go back and do gardening. We see a lot of that. We see an upsurge of that in most recent years, where you're actually producing foods in these individual home gardens or the gardens that the church sponsor, where you can have a storage when people get on hard times, that have food built up that we're producing ourselves. Vernon Johns, who was the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, who preceded Martin Luther King, was an advocate of such way back in the 50s, and he was turned out of his church for being at that time a visionary. So the blueprint is laid out there. The church itself needs to make the The individual church needs to make the decision that it's going to reach out to the community, since the community is not adjacent to it any longer. And all of the programs we just described, they just need to be implemented in a nuanced, contemporary fashion.
So I see. You want to add to that, Ms. Pugh?
Say it again. Oh,
so with the question, are you saying like the church itself or the community itself? So I'm trying to see because you said not necessarily the church. So I'm trying to see how to.
So in our conversation, I want to be clear that when I talk about church, I'm not separating church and community. And I may say it interchangeably. So it may be church and community. So how we can collaborate and begin to work together so that we all on the same page in a sense. Because sometimes you have the church here and you got the community. Community knows nothing about what's going on in the church. Church knows nothing about what's going on in the community. So when Lynn talked about earlier gardens and stuff, you have churches have their own gardens, but it's hard to get the community to participate in that piece. Or the community may have a garden, but the church is nowhere in around us. So I'm trying to bridge this gap so that we kind of come together. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I understand now. So like growing up, we had this thing that we would do on the weekends called witnessing. And we would go from door to door, knocking on people's door, telling the good news, telling them what we got going on in church. We got family and friends day. We got such and such a day. We would love to invite you. So things of that nature. I think that there was an outreach program that did not just outreach to the people that were inside of our community, inside of the walls, but outside. And getting engaged. I think that also that the church and the communities need to be aware of the changing times, and as generations like the millennials, Generation Y, Generation X, but there are different foundations, and I think within the organization you have to have a task force that is able to, or a think tank that is able to reach all of the generations to get as much participation and cross communication as possible. And so, with that being said, there has to be openness and leadership as well, because sometimes our churches can become, and our community leaders can be little dictators, and it's very offsetting to the people in the community when they do not feel, or congregation, when they do not really feel seen or heard, or valued, because some people really want to work, but they don't know where and how they utilize their talents. And if these things aren't expressed or open, to where you can have counseling committees in the church, social work communities in the church. You can combine the youth program and the program for the elders together, so there can be communication between the youth and the elders. There's guidance, and then there's teaching. So I think those things will help when we're talking about church and community. It has to be a reconstruction inside of the leadership in the churches, not leadership, but just like the task force needs to be done. You have to have a task force to put things in place and see what the needs of the community are, which means that you're going to have to get out and knock on doors. We're going to have to go to where the people are at. Too often, we want people, to come to the church. And, I believe God said, go out. You there for, the highways and byways. We got to get out there. We have to go back to the older things, because people are programmed to watching what they want to watch on social media. So they're not going to be clocking for you. You know what I'm saying? They, even though you're going live on social media and posting things, if you're not in their algorithm, they're not going to be clocking you. So you're going to have to go out and go where they are. You're going to have to meet them where they're at, We went to the street corners. We went to where the gangbangers were. We went to the community parks. We went to the gyms. We're going to have to do that and reach out to them. And sometimes it's going to take some work. It's going to take a little time to see that you're consistent, so they can trust you. Because that one time is not going to get it. You're going to be like, hey, hey again. So we have to realize sometimes we get discouraged because they don't come after the first time we have the conversation. But you have to realize that the people in our communities have been abandoned for a long time, and they're constantly abandoned. And so they're going to need to see the consistency of somebody to gain their trust.
Gotcha.
I would like to just add to that, if I may.
Yes.
Please.
Terry makes an excellent commentary in terms of what she just laid out and described. So what we have done, we being Galilee Missionary Baptist Church at Pier Avenue, we've created a new ministry that I helped to bring about and put the components together, and it's called the Civic Community Economic Engagement Ministry, and I coined it as an acronym C2E2. And so the first thing we've already done is the notion to bring back Black history being taught. If it's not going to be taught at the academic level, at the school level, we want to teach it in our sanctuary. And so we've taken on the fourth Sunday of each month, the fourth Wednesday of each month, to have someone in that talks about Black history. And then we want to add to that, we want to let them know when we have something that it's not just the church members of Galilee, but it's the people of the community that's invited. So we want to put it on our website, add the people to our text message threads and things of that nature. And so it's a process in place, and we're looking at a number of things that needs to be done and how we do it. And so we're hopeful that as this ministry grows, that we'll do exactly what Terry is talking about, engaging the community, assessing the need, and to continue to build the ministry based on those needs.
Well, that's great, man. I think that's a great piece as we get the word out about Galilee churches doing those type of events and pieces, that where we began to teach Black history, where we began to talk about those persons like Vernon John and telling those stories. You said his name earlier, Williams, Hosea Williams, and being able to teach and tell those stories, the history, and I think that's very much important as we share this. But how do we, in a climate where our finances are being we've always had finances challenged, I guess, as a people, but they're going to be more challenged. And so as we look at our finances, I'm going to switch again, as we look at our finances as a people, as a total race of people, and the stress that comes with finances, and it affects our health, it affects our homes. Can we talk about how does financial stress, how does it affect our health, how does it affect our homes? And I hope as we look toward the future, financial stress. Wait, let me say it this way. We want to talk about financial healing and climate conscious choices. So how does financial stress affect our health, our homes, and our hope?
First of all, poverty is a disease. And the side effects of poverty is murder, gang banging, robbery, high blood pressure, mental illness, divorce, suicide. There's a lot of, then you have lupus, you have congestion or heart failure, all of these things because of poverty. We're diseased, we're stressed, our soul is weary. We can pray and pray, and sometimes because we have lack of education, so we have to look at that. Poverty itself is a disease, and the things that are happening in our community are the side effects or the symptoms, not side effects, the symptoms of poverty. So we have to see how do we cannot just put a Band-Aid or treat one symptom. We have to go to the root cause of the poverty, which is the financial education, but also the mindset reset, and letting people know that it's not going to be a quick work, but we also have to have clearinghouses and accountability stats. So if we work in groups and cubicles and we join people with these banks or these financial organizations and structures, you have Operation Hope, a lot of things that organizations that help are geared towards our people that do help and have processes to where you can get books and facilitate programs in the church, facilitate programs in the communities. It's like there are things available. We just have to do it. Do we have farmers in the church? We can all get together as a church or churches and buy that meat from that farmer. Everybody pitch in. If we have we got a food fund, put that money in that food and everybody get half a cow. That's going to last them 6 months. A deep freezer dry so they can have deep freezers. You got to fill the peas. Let's go support this brother with these fill of peas. He don't never have to worry about somebody buying peas. These are some of the things that we can do as a co-op. The churches can form their own, or the communities can form co-ops as well. I may have gotten off subject a little bit. I love this stuff. Go ahead.
You're good. You're good. Because when you talk about communities and churches coming together, even in the climate in which we're in, you said we can get together, right? But one concern I have, not concern, is we look down the road. If we look down the future, if we don't come together, we won't have the funds to come together. So stuff takes money. It takes money to kill a cow. I mean, I'm sorry. It takes money not to kill a cow, but to even raise a cow, but to have meat. You got to have money to do it. So looking down, when we talk about our financial instability, if we're looking down the road, how do we put ourselves in a space where we know that when the rubber meets the road, we're gonna at least eat? How do we, because when you talked about poverty being a disease, I began to think about people, they start stealing, folks start exposed to, that's a symptom. They start, and then they go to jail. And now that parent is not in the house, so that child has to be dealt with, and so, so when we look at all of this, the things that are going on, it was made a comment, it was a comment made in here, building relationships take time. And I know that the climate that we in, as we've got to transform, we got to get back. I hear Lynn saying we got to go back to some of those ways, and we've been used to, riding our cars with air conditioning. We've been used to wearing the clothes that we want to wear and drive where we want to drive and eat what we want to eat when we want to eat it. But looking at this climate, what are some of the financial things that we may need to be thinking about when we talk about our economy? When we look at the stock market, when we look at what's going on, what are something we need to be doing right now? I know we're going to plant food. What else? What are some other things we need to be looking at?
Well, we need to also take a look at this. We've been saying this for 60 years now. Martin Luther King, how many times we have heard that as a Black community, we are the 9th largest economy in the world. That's synonymous to like Canada. So when Martin King started saying it, it was $800 and something billion a year. And when you hear it now, we're a $2 trillion economy. But what we have to do is to make that make sense in the everyday minds of people. So when we start talking about that collective effort of buying power, we need to break it down to each household. And in each household, like again, the blueprint has already been laid out there. You can't spend more than what you make. So you've got to commit yourself, especially economic times like that are probably definitely up the road for us. We got to save a little bit. As a financial advisor, I always advise people to save 10% of everything that they earn. And I know some people feel like that's in competition with the pastor wanting them to give 10% of offering. But if you don't, whether you seed into the church or you seed into something that you're passionate about, tithing is a process of how prosperity is going to come back to you in some shape, form, or fashion, just in the universe. But basically, we need to spend more. We need to save more than we make. We need to make sure that we're saving something on a regular basis. And when there's the opportunity to pool your dollars as a collective, then we need to jump onto that particular opportunity. Because if you think about it, every ethnic community that has come to the United States have not made it mainstream without them in and of themselves as a group coalescing together. And for the situation that African Americans find themselves in, the cavalry is not coming to get you. Trump is not coming to get you. That's U.S. government is not coming to get you. So we're gonna have to follow the plan that other ethnic groups they merge their economics together and were able to weather the hard times. And then on the other side of that, they were able to build businesses. And I know we hear this time and time and time again, but what is insanity? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So we need to do something differently to expect the result that we desire.
Right?
That's
Come
beautiful. That is beautiful. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I do believe that co-op is the answer when it comes to our communities. And I believe just like Lynn said, you have 10% for church, 10% of yourself. I think also with the church tithes and the money that they give with offering, there needs to be 10% goes to here, 10% goes to there, 10% goes however that divvies up. So and more transparency with organizations and what the funds are being utilized for. And if we're trying to create confidence in the community, and trust in the community, then the transparency is important with the strategy and the implementation. I think that is very important because one of the things that stop people from trusting is that they can't see. When you have people building money and they collecting money and they don't see the plan. There's a conversation, there's a speech, and they don't see any implementation. They don't see how it's going. So, and also putting out young fires. I hate that we put out our youth so fast that are hungry and have desires and are ready to run and go and have new ideas, but because it's not what we're used to, we're quick to put that fire out. And not understanding that is what God has downloaded in their spirit. And we have to catch hold to that vision as well. It may not be what we're used to, or it may not be the blueprint of old, but nevertheless, it's still going to work for this time and climate. So I think some of the people that are in leadership have to understand and have a great keen intuition and divine discernment when God is utilizing somebody or doing something unconventional, because God's ways are not our ways either. You know what I'm saying? His thoughts are not our thoughts, is what he says. So we're going to have to be so in tune to understand when God is speaking through someone else and using someone too, and bring that aboard. Because sometimes we block or slow things up because we're not familiar. And I think we have to be mindful with that, because the young people, when we go out to the community, they're going to speak from their position. And if we're not in their position, it's going to be hard for us to understand. So when we have people in our task force, we're going to have people who's living in the streets, that's living in the communities, that are experiencing these things real time, and teach them how not to focus on the problem, because the problem is not going to change, but start asking them questions that's going to show, okay, so what can you do differently? What would you do differently? And then give them the tools to be able to make those changes. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yes. Okay. I've watched both of you. I've met Terry, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, somewhere around in there on Texas Street, downtown Texas, where there's not have been a lot of movement taking place, and even now there's a lot more movement. I've watched Lynn just kind of get down and then get back up. He probably never was down. You never would know it. And I've kind of watched. So the question that I got in terms of finances, what was a habit or mindset shift that helped you move toward your goal? What was a habit or mindset shift that helped you move toward your balance? Let's go Lynn first. What was a habit or mindset shift for you that helped you?
I think my habits came from my grandmother, who never had more than 7th grade education, but always seen that if you needed some money, you come to Big Mama house and she had some money stashed somewhere. I was like, since I've been knowing this lady been on Social Security since I've been born. Well, maybe not so, but long story short, she used to always talk about charity starts at home and spreads abroad. And so when I understood what charity meant, that it meant love, then it made sense to me. And so one of the first habits of me is always to have something stashed for a rainy day, because they are coming. And she would always preach that. And so even as a financial advisor, I would always talk about a rainy day fund when I would talk with clients. That's the first thing you need to do, have some money set aside. And I also believe that at an early age, even as a teenager, maybe going into my college years, I would hear certain preachers talk about investing in your community, investing in people that you care about, investing in something that you ain't gonna see today, but it'll manifest itself later. And so I think those two principles, just doing that, allows you to look at life in a bigger perspective, in that you've got to be setting something aside, and you've got to be investing in something other than yourself. And I recommend that people invest in themselves, but investing in something that you may not see the fruits of it right here, right now, but they are coming. And so, and everything else based on those two sentiments, I build everything else upon that.
Wow. Thank you.
So that's the most simplistic way to put it.
Gotcha. Thank you, Ms. Terry. Thank you, Lynn. Ms. Terry.
So wow. So I've been self-employed my entire life. So I'd say that. And once I start once my clientele start developing, and I start having more people that were more had a lot of financial literacy or new political things, I think that's what changed my my mindset a lot about how I was spending my money and what I use my money. When I initially started my business, I started it in a community that was underserved. The gang rate was, I started in Queensboro, and it was in the early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. And if anybody knows about that neighborhood, it was the Wild Wild West. Mm-hmm. But I was intentional about putting there because what I know is a lot of people don't go back to where they come from because of trauma. And they feel like nobody was able to help me out of there, so I'm not going back there, realizing that the people that you were growing up with was experiencing the same thing that you were experiencing. So they only could do what they could do, which is opposite of somebody that's not in the community, that has access to more, that has more education, that has more resources. So they were able to help you in a different capacity, not understanding that God put you in their path so they could help you, but for you to come back and help your people so that they too can get out of the mud. But because of the trauma, we talked about mental health, that's a lot of reasons why people don't come back to their community, or they don't realize that it took you some time to get it. So the people that you're serving it's not going to eat right away either. So these are things that, what changed my mind was, first I stopped buying things on sale, because what I found out is that I had a whole bunch of stuff that I did not want. And then that habit also, when I started buying discount things, I started having discount friends, I started having discount relationships, only because they were accessible and it was right there. So it's a mindset that happened on things. So I started being more intentional about how I utilize my money. And not just getting a lot of things that I really didn't need, but can use instead, and going to getting the things that I wanted, which means sometimes I would have to save up a little bit longer and wait to get it. But I got something that I wanted, that I could appreciate and that I can utilize. So those are some of the things that I would do. I would also, with my children, I wouldn't buy them a lot of name brand clothes. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because I wanted to make sure that they knew that nobody else's name should validate you. So if you have to wear Gucci to feel important, you have to wear Louis Vuitton to feel important. It was a problem for me, because they're charging that much because they feel like their name is worth that. And if you don't feel the same thing about your name, I have a problem. So with them buying things, I would not necessarily buy name brand things, but things that they liked and they appreciated, and not be hung up on whose names it was that was on those things. So those are the conversations that I would have with my children and with myself, not because I couldn't afford it, but I didn't need that to validate who I was as an individual. So which allowed me to save a lot of money, because I still look fresh and fly, It just didn't cost me $5,000 for one outfit. My bag don't cost, you know, it's $600, but it carries the stuff and it's cute and it carries the same things, and I don't have to worry about getting it scuffed up. You know, so I think it's the value system is what I'm saying. Would that be in fact, Lynn? What I value it is determines how I spend my money intentionally and where I spend my money and where I spend my time at. And if I value other people's validation, it's always going to lead me in a negative. It's always going to be, you know,
you know what I'm saying? Values? Look at the checkbook. Look at the bank statement.
Exactly. And you know how they dress, you know, so like I can see a person that has a $1,500 bag but don't have $1,500 in their checking account. You know, and that's because
it don't have $1,500 in their bag.
Yeah, you know, and those are the things that I'm like, okay, then I'll be like, oh, this is an investment. I was like, well, I think you need to sell it because you're asking me for $20 for your electric bill. Why don't you hop that bag? You know what I'm saying? But no, they gotta keep that to make somebody, you know, to impress other people that don't have as much as you have either. So, but like I was saying, with that, why I went into the shop, I had to put my shop in Queensboro because I had to go back and let people know it's not where you're from, but you know, that determines what you're supposed to have, and also letting them know that our starting may be a little different because they intentionally don't give us money to start our businesses. Not in our neighborhood. They intentionally put other people in our neighborhoods to make business because they didn't want them in their neighborhoods. We have to understand why we have so many, you know, Iranian stores, there's so many Asian stores, there's so many Hispanic stores, and we can't get a store. It's because it'll keep us down, and it'll keep them out. So we're gonna we'll give them money to go somewhere we don't want them to be, and they know that we're gonna spend money and that we don't have access to cars. We're gonna have to go to the corner store. I can't go if John Paul builds a store around on LB Road, and your church members and your families in Queensboro, how they gonna support you? So even that type of mindset, you know, where we're located, strategically locating our business to make sure that we can be of use to our community. And we can build generational wealth, hire our own people, service our own people, you know, and we have to be mindful of that. And then not looking, and I tell my children all the time, if you got a friend that has a business and they have quality service, support that business.
Absolutely.
Matt, I was watching a thing with, it was Master P, and he was talking about how his kids love Tony the Tiger, and he made a cereal. And everybody said that his cereal tastes better than Tony the Tiger. And then it was like, I'm not going to buy that because it's a knockoff. You know, so even though my product is better, it's not as high. And because Tony the Tiger came first, or because you know that brand, you know, you're not going to support me. So even just having the conversations with each other about supporting each other, I think the Black-owned movement is going great, you know. But we still have to have those conversations, and we can't be afraid to have those conversations, you know, about other people's names being on us to make us valid. You know, I think that's a very important conversation. I think that comes early because that's a very strong monster to get from up under the bed when you're talking to somebody that's older. You know what I'm saying? So I think the financial literacy needs to be started early. We do it in our school. We make sure I have people come in. I partner with Tia. A lot of people come in and we talk about finances and budgeting and how to get your own home and what type of home do you want to use and how to use a rural development loans and how much money you need to have and setting up. Not saying don't grow your business, but utilize this resource before you get this much. You know what I'm saying? So also starting with your end game in mind before you make your strategy. There's a lot of things that we can do to build financial wealth, but we have to be intentional about it and know what that intent is.
Well, that's deep. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all listening. We're going to wrap things up now. And what I want to do is, as we wrap up, this has been a powerful conversation, I think, I believe on today, as we talk about best sustainable practices, our finances. We talk about investing. We talk about investing for the future, even after we are gone. because I heard someone say, I ain't gonna save nothing here for y'all to fight over, but yet, hey, and so what I'm saying is that that's something that we want to be able to teach, not that, but we want to be able to teach people to invest for the future of our people. Any last closing statements you want to make on today? You're going to give you the opportunity to make closing statements. Any closing comments?
I just want to say this last thing that Terry triggered this in my mind about people not wanting to come back and do stuff in communities that they came from because of the trauma. And that was the reason why I started the State of Black Shreveport. And that's why I always called it State of Black Shreveport Symposium and Economic Summit, that we needed to have the knowledge of ourselves, and we needed to have the conversations around what plagues us in our community. And then secondly, we need to be reminded that we need to be doing business with one another. So we just celebrated the 12th annual State of Black Shreveport back in February. And I'm so proud and that I never changed the name of it, and I never will change the name of it, because we got to own who we are. We got to own what challenges that we have and how we move forward with this, and not be missed by the notion that every other ethnic community can do the same thing. But we hear from our brothers and sisters of the lighter hue oftentimes that such events are dividing people, which is not nothing but propaganda and a mechanism born out of fear that dollar won't be coming to them. And so I just want to say lastly, able to get back on track with our scholarships. So this is our big check. And so now this year we're going to be able to do some $1,000 scholarships.
Wow.
Hey, now.
BTW, Woodlawn, places like that. And so we had to bag up to move forward because of expenses. But I needed to get back to doing scholarships on a regular basis, and we wanted to move from $500 scholarships to $1,000. So thanks be to God.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Let me interject. When you talked about Queensboro, and there's an issue now with the Queensboro school that's on the table, and so and some of the other schools that are on the table in our city, what we're dealing with. I don't want to ask any questions. I want to throw that out there, because when we talk about community, how do we keep in community and the churches there and the people are there, the families are there, how do we keep us moving forward regardless? So come on, Miss Terry, and now share your thoughts. I had to intersect that, put that in there before I forgot.
So I know that schools are business is what I'm understanding, because a lot of things is about the finance. But I also know that when they move children, they overcrowd other schools, and they're still going to have to pay those teachers the same amount of money. The school board is still going to have to pay for the lights and the water to be on in that building until something else happens. So they can miss me with it's costing too much to keep this school open, or it's not enough. The thing is that the classrooms are going to be smaller, and the teachers are going to be able to teach freely without being as stressed out, and the students are going to be able to get what they need if they keep these neighborhood schools open. When you move, I am a product of busing. It was very hard for me to build foundations and grounds, because in Los Angeles at the time, they were sending us a Pacific Palisades, Canyon, so it was hard to have ground level relationships and build community with the people that were in your community, because you're getting bused off to these different locations. You're not able to grow up with teachers from kindergarten to 1st, 5th grade. You knew what teachers you may be getting in those grades because everybody, it was there. Right. So it's causing a disruption in our community intentionally. I'm also hearing that they're going to end the program for barbering and cosmetology at Booker T. Washington. The majority of the students, I'm going to say 95% in Caddo Parish that goes to those programs are African American. Those type of programs for those who are not academia driven, but are doing vocational work, which causes them to be entrepreneurs. it's going to limit the amount of time, to limit the exposure to things that they can have. There's no more textile, there's no more woodwork, there's no more carpentry, there's no more electrical. Now there's not barber and so we're intentionally taking these things out of our school, which we're good at. We're inventors by nature. We're innovative. We create, so we have to be mindful of and pay attention to what is going on in the school board, speaking our voice. The meetings are intentionally held while people are at work. I cannot get off work at 2:30, 3 o'clock to go to a school board meeting and protest, and then the people that do go to the meetings, they wait to the last leg to tell the community about what's going on. So you tell me 2 weeks before that they about to vote and they didn't already have this due process to come tell me they about to close this damn school, darn school.
Yeah.
So we have to start holding our leadership in accountable as well. Once we start seeing them moving shaky, we need to start pulling their coattail, because if we vote you in, we forget to realize that we also have the power to take you out. So we're going to have to start holding our elected officials accountable. It's very important that the people start getting involved and knowing that you know your needs better than anybody. And I think that because of conditioned escapism, we want to give that to somebody else. We want to, and then give them the blame, but we're just as fault. So if these schools are closing and we're not saying anything, we're just as much as fault as the people that we put in position. So I think personal accountability in the community needs to start, there needs to be an uprising in that.
Gotcha.
But also when they close schools, they close altars. When we have schools named after our people, those are our altars. They're not closed. They're not changing the names of their schools. They're not taking down. When they was talking about these statues up at the courthouse, that's for them. That's legacy, But we don't have no problem with them renaming our schools and taking away or closing our schools that have our people's names on it, that blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. We have to think about that. That's history erasure. Okay.
Well, thank you. As we wrap it up, as we listen, this has been a joy on today. I want to share with us that Greener Church, Louisiana, will host our summit July 12th at the Paradise Baptist Church. July 12th at the Paradise Baptist Church. Then we also have our national summit that's going to be in Atlanta, Georgia, on October 12th through the 14th. Any announcement about some things you all want to share that's coming up? Any announcements? Okay.
You go ahead, Terry.
I'm just going to say, if anybody wants to join Barber School, I'm located at 711 Texas Street. The name of the school is Setting the Standard Barbering and Natural Hair Academy. We do all things hair. If you need any herbal remedies, I'm an herbalist. If you need coaching, you can contact me, 318-673-4100.
I was about to tell them they can get aromatherapy up there also.
Aromatherapy. Yes, indeed. We serve all the things.
What about Reiki?
Huh?
What about Reiki? Is it called Reiki?
Reiki. I am a Reiki practitioner. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Beautiful. All right, brother Leon.
Hey man, we in throes of planning something for Juneteenth. Last year, we had a panel discussion at Uptown Lounge and Bar at 1620 Marshall, and we had Gary Chambers that came in and talked to our Gen Zers and millennials as a panel discussion. We're doing something very similar, just not able to give a full announcement of it right now, but we, and that being State of Black Freeport, we'll be doing something with the same intent, targeting our millennials and Gen Zers in some type of panel discussion and some type of pop-up deal where we're going to be explaining to people about how to start a business, how to do an LLC, and a symposium that will be some panel discussions. I think that conversation is what we need. For years, we didn't have it in the community. I think now people are more amenable to it, and we need to continue the dialogue.
Gotcha. Well, listen, y'all. Sustainability begins with intention. When we align our money with our values, we restore balance in ourselves, in our churches, and our communities. Thank you.
The race is on.